Hey everybody, welcome to RideMSTA podcast episode, I think it's 4, pretty sure it's 4. Tonight,
It is four.
we are talking about motorcycle myths. Fact or fiction? We've all heard them, we all know them. It's going to be
We
an
all
interesting
love 'em.
discussion. Yes. Unfortunately, Jerry couldn't be with us tonight. He's on assignment. I thought he was looking for Vegemite in Arkansas. Somehow he ended up in New Mexico. Took the wrong turn at Albuquerque, but he's looking like he's having a bloody great time. So keep the pictures coming, Jerry. Keep having fun. We love seeing it. I hope you have a really great ride, and we'll see you on the next episode. But tonight we've got RJ. Say hi, RJ.
Hello,
And we've got Tom.
beautiful
Say-
sunny Pennsylvania.
Good evening from Hot Atlanta.
And good evening from Wisconsin, where I spent all weekend teaching new riders how to ride motorcycles. And I am questioning my life choices.
At least you didn't have to teach a 6-year-old how to use a clutch the last 2 weeks.
Somebody else should be questioning their life decisions. All right, a little bit of business to go through today. We're going to do upcoming events for the MSTA. On the 23rd of May, we've got the TriStar Rally happening in Sparta, North Carolina. We got June 22nd, Cannon Valley Rally happening out of Davis, West Virginia. We've got the Bingland Lodge Rally on July 11th happening out of Little Switzerland, North Carolina.
And I'll be at that one.
And I'm jealous because I
If
know
anybody
that area.
cares.
I do. I'm jealous because I want to go ride that area again. I miss home. Actually, that same weekend, we got the Sky High Tour happening over in Idaho Springs, Colorado, so the other direction. May 29th, for anybody in Wisconsin, we are going to be meeting at Linda's Bakery in West Salem at 9:30 a.m. on May 29th. Wait, 29th. Did I do that day right? No. May 26th. Sorry, guys, tired brain. It's a Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. We're going to ride around the Driftless. We're going to have some coffee and some really good baked goods in the morning. We're going to do a stop somewhere for lunch, but being Memorial Day weekend, I'm trying to nail down where that isn't too busy, because that area gets busy. You guys got anything going on for events or whatnot in your local areas coming up?
No, other than that, unfortunately, I missed the DGR today. Just had some family commitments and couldn't make that. So we'll have to try that next year. For those that don't know the DGR, it's the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, worldwide charity event and ride that takes place in hundreds of cities around the world, benefiting prostate cancer.
Really cool ride. It's a lot of fun because there's one out of Milwaukee up here, and now they're doing one out of Madison. It's been a bunch of years since I've been to there because I don't have a bike that technically qualifies for it right now, but it is a really cool event.
Yeah, so the idea is that you should have a vintage and or a vintage looking motorcycle to attend, and you, as they say, get dressed up in your dandiest outfits, which unfortunately I don't have dandy type outfits, so that was a protractor. But yeah, unfortunately couldn't make that, so I'm going to have to really put that on the calendar for next year.
I may or may not have hit up one of the local resales, like thrift shops we have up here prior to the one I went on, just because I had the same problem. Plot twist, because this is funny thanks to our class. Mr. showed up an hour late on day 2, rode all yesterday in a sport jacket because that was his long sleeves.
Really?
Looked rather dapper.
All right, he was getting ready for the ride. Yeah.
So anybody who doesn't teach the MSF curriculum or the beginner rider courses for anything else, we require long sleeves. We don't specify what you have to wear. A long sleeve t-shirt, anything that covers your arms is fine. That was his choice. Rock and roll. We're good with that. Okay.
Well, all right. So I had a good one last class. I guess it was about a month ago. It's the other requirement is that you have to have long pants. Doesn't say what type, but no holes in them. So of course we had a young kid that was in class with the standard fashionable jeans that have rips in the knees.
Mm-hmm.
So I took him into the garage area and I duct taped his knees. So just wrapped his knees in duct tape.
See, when I teach at the tech, we have a Fleet Farm store, like almost right across the street. I've had them show up in that, and I send them over and say, "You got to go buy pants." My favorite one though is the ones that the girls that show up in the leggings. It's like if you hit the ground in those, it's tissue paper.
Technically, they're okay though. Yeah, they're covered.
We got our QA told us technically that's okay.
Our requirements are jeans or sturdy pants. We don't allow the leggings.
Yeah, hey, we'll get to it at the end, but I did a couple demo rides, and on one of the demo rides that I went to for Yamaha, there was a gal in leggings and just a spandex top.
I don't know. We had a blessing of the bikes yesterday at the Harley dealer that I instruct at, and of course you know about how those usually end up. And we are on our lunch break. I'm sitting in the pavilion right by the parking lot, just hammering down some water, and I watch an obviously very not sober rider with his girlfriend on the back come in the parking lot 10 miles an hour all over the place and drops bike, and she was in leggings.
Ooh.
And she had rash from the knee to the hip.
Oh.
Yeah, I just looked at the students that were sitting around me. I'm like, now you see why we stressed riding gear?
Yeah, there you go.
That deer in the headlights look and the realization. So, since we're talking about all this, we might as well, since we've covered events. Oh, one more thing I want to cover. Don't forget, Star Rally this October. There is the bike raffle and now the Nomar lift raffle associated with that. So go buy your tickets for those. You don't have to be present to win. Don't forget about them. They're cool. GSX 8R, a brand new one, or 8S. It's a GSX 8S is the raffle bike this year. And that new Nomar bike lift, is really cool. So don't forget those. Give them a look.
Yeah, having a lift is wonderful.
Amen. Especially for those of us over 40.
Unfortunately, I do not. So changing oil, I still am on my back on the ground.
Yeah, but for everything else, there's Discover Card.
There you go.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and get into this whole motorcycle myths, because we got some doozies tonight. We're going to start off with RJ. RJ, bust out your first myth.
Okay, my first one is using the front brake makes you crash. How many of you have heard that? I think our discussion we had prior to the podcast, so how many people say that right hand lever is the crash button?
Oh, I'm teaching at a Harley dealer. Oh, so many times.
Yeah, you guys must get that one more than I do. That I have not heard that in a long time. Other than the myth that kind of goes along with it is that you can't touch your front brake in a curve, or trail braking means you're just using your rear brake. But I've not heard or at least in the circles that I teach at or I'm around, say front brake makes you crash.
So we don't hear it in our rider coach circles because obviously we know better. But, I mean, Wisconsin being the home of Harley Davidson, yes, I'm wearing a shirt. I get it. I get them for free, okay? So...
Well, they do make a nice T-shirt.
They do make... I love this hoodie. This is actually my favorite hoodie. I'm not going to lie. But...
And to the defense of the Harley crowd, even the King of the Baggers bikes that they're racing, the rear brake on those is almost the same size as the front brake.
It is. But this is how we dispel
because of the weight.
This is how we dispel all this whole mess with the students, and that is your front brake. When you brake with a motorcycle, where does the weight go? It goes onto the front wheel and off the back wheel. So you would want to add more braking force on the wheel that has the most traction. Up here in the cruiser mindset, nobody knows what progressive braking is. So everybody has this idea because they're used to hammering on that front brake, and oh yeah, when you hammer on it, it doesn't have time to work and it washes out. It's not the brake's fault, it's yours.
I highly recommend anyone look at I believe it's Yamaha Champions Riding School has a video on YouTube talking about points of grip.
Yeah.
And the discussion of you with braking, if the tire isn't loaded, you can't start putting brake on. If you just try to go to max braking on your front brake with an unloaded front tire, it's not going to turn out well, and it will be a crash button.
Yeah, I do like their phrase where they say, load the tire before you work the tire.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I know, Tom, you also teach MSF as well, right?
I do.
So we do that foot exercise where we have them scrub their foot across the pavement and then put weight on it and try to do it again.
Yep. For exercise 7.
Correct. Now, believe it or not, what I've actually done, so the days that I ride my tracers to class, I'll do the demo for 8, which is just that braking demonstration on that bike. Because it's a tall suspension, so as it brakes, it really throws the front end down. Like, it's a defined press of the front suspension. It dives. And I've had a lot of students at Harley, because I actually did that this weekend at Harley again. They look at it and go, oh, that's what you mean.
Yeah.
I've also discovered that if you do a stoppie on the G310R in front of students who are arguing the point, it helps too.
Yeah. So I had a funny one as far as doing that demo. I had I picked a bike we got some new bikes at the training center I'm at, and it was a Honda 300 sport bike, and I had not ridden this bike before, and of course I chose it to do the demo for 8, and doesn't have ABS. And on the 25-mile-an-hour demonstration, I locked up the rear and put down about 40 feet of rubber.
Ooh.
So just slid down. So the next week when I was doing the class, I picked a Rebel 300 Cruiser to do it. Now my skid mark was still there, and did the same thing, and I showed threshold braking, and I stopped in the same distance as when I locked up the rear tire the previous week. And so I made that a discussion point for the students. I was like, see that skid mark? I did that a week ago, and I stopped just as quicker without skidding a tire.
Yep. So we, a couple weeks ago at the Tech, actually, which was odd, we had 2 students who were experienced cruiser riders, and I kept having to remind them, no, you need to use the front brake. You need to use your front brake. No, that's the crash button. That's the crash button. No, it's not. So when I did that braking demo, I came through in the 25 mile an hour on one of our G310Rs, and I wasn't actually trying to do a stoppie. I was trying to really load it up and show them, look, this is what. Well, I wound up bringing the back end about 2 feet up.
Ooh.
And I stopped the bike. I looked at him. I opened my modular. I was like, so, does that dispel your rumor about the front brake being a crash button? But it is all about proper brake management. You've heard us mention progressive braking. That is what you need to do, or yes, it can actually cause a crash.
Yes. Yeah, if not done properly, using the front brake in a turn can cause a crash.
Yes.
If used properly,
there you go.
It's a completely. There's many racers that would love to show you that you can use a brake while leaned over.
Oh yeah.
It's rare that I use my rear brake when I am trail braking through curves up in the mountains. I usually only, for tighter hairpins, I'll use the rear to stabilize the bike a little bit more and trail off the front before I do the rear. I'll hang on the rear a little bit longer.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize too. When you've got to these more advanced skill sets, you can actually use the brakes in a curve to help change your direction. So, say you're going through a decreasing radius,
Yes.
you can actually use the brake to pull yourself tighter into the curve to make the decreasing radius.
Yep.
That's all part of the trail braking exercises and things like that. You use that to change. So, no,
The brakes and throttle can be used to change the direction of the bike,
yes, even in a
to
curve.
tighten or to widen. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I notice I watch a lot of the if you go and watch the Killboy channel or the 129 Slayer, uh, and you look at these are the guys up on the sorry, I should backtrack. These are the photo guys in the curves up on Tail of the Dragon. And if you look at the photos of a lot of the bikers, take a look at their right hand. All these guys are always in curves. No one is covering the rear brake. Everybody's got their hand around the throttle going through a curve. So, everybody should have a finger, two fingers up on that on your front brake, my bad, uh, at all times, especially going through a curve. But it's surprising that it's probably less than 10% of ice. I'll look through pictures and see people covering their front going through a curve.
Right. And I think that, I don't even know where that actually started, other than it was just some of these older cruiser riders who washed out the front hard.
Well,
Well, it started with the whole chopper scene too. I mean,
well, all they
with
had
a
was
raked
rear.
out, with a really raked out. Yeah, I mean, there was no, you weren't ever getting the loading on that front brake or the front wheel to actually do that. With more modern suspension geometry, it's a lot easier to load that front tire than it was
And I
before.
will say, there's been a number of videos on YouTube, other training schools that critique MSF because part of our curriculum is get your braking done before you get into the curve.
Right.
And then get off the brakes. Whereas, some of the other curriculums are saying, beginners now they should be trail braking right off. And I see the point. Not absolute beginners where we're at, where if something is if they have some type of issue, that tendency is to just clamp down on that brake in the curve.
Right.
Yes.
We get into the advanced rider course. I just taught one of those a few weeks ago, and absolutely, we're teaching trail braking all the way through to the apex. So there's a time and place for it, but as a beginner where you have zero skills of how to use the brake, no, I think it's a good idea, to get your braking done before you get in, and then just get yourself around the curve nice and easy. That's a next skill up, I think, then is the trail braking.
Right. I think so. We got lucky enough to have Dr. Oakes at a PDW last year up here, and
Okay.
this is one of the discussions that came up, and he made a very valid point that's right in line with what you're saying. He said, okay, these are new riders. These people are assumed to have never ridden a motorcycle. Our job in the beginner rider course is to get them acclimated with the controls and getting them practicing the muscle memory at a basic level. So if we start trying to introduce advanced techniques, we're going to put them in danger. That's what the advanced rider course is for. So it's not that we're not keen on trail braking. For anybody that thinks the MSF is just against it altogether, we're absolutely not. It is taught on another level. It's not taught for beginners, and it makes a lot of sense because, like Tom said, you're going to have that new rider who's going into the curve and just cranks on the binders and down they go.
Yep. So what's your other one, RJ?
Well, interestingly enough, it kind of falls into the exact same topic, and that is that the rear of the motorcycle squats under acceleration. And it's been the theory for years that when you, especially when you're turning, when you go to get on the accelerator or get on the throttle, that the back end of the bike squats and the forks extend. And but with the way the rear of of most modern chain driven motorcycles are set up, the rear actually rises when you start accelerating, because it's pulling the geometry between where the sprocket and the front sprocket and the rear sprocket is. When you put tension on the chain, it actually will extend the swing arm and make the bike taller instead of shorter.
Okay. Now I'm trying to think back to when I had my GS. I'm trying to think if I felt it.
No,
it
shaft drive
down
is
a little
completely
bit.
different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, shaft drive is because then you end up having what they call it, shaft jack.
Right. You
Yeah.
get a
as
little
well.
backlash on it. Yep.
Yeah, but with chain driven bikes, the sprocket is, and the front sprocket is now higher than the center of the rear sprocket, and that is what causes it to not do that anymore. So now as you're taking braking pressure off the front wheel, your front forks will go up as well. So it may feel like it's like the front's getting higher than the back, but it's not the throttle that's actually doing it.
That actually makes sense. And I know a lot of the shaft
Gotcha.
bikes I've driven. Yeah, they definitely. The first time I rode a shaft drive bike and I got on it, and you could actually feel the shaft jack on it where it would pick up the back. It actually felt a little bit unnerving. But
I mean, all they're all doing it to some extent.
yeah, I actually had
Cool.
never heard of that one, so I was kind of curious where it was coming from. But yeah, it makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
That actually I did module 1 of California Superbike School 2 weeks ago, and that their big thing, their level 1 mostly focuses on throttle control and not braking.
Interesting. Okay.
Because typically, if you're going to launch yourself into orbit at a track, you're doing it on the throttle coming out of the curve, and high siding versus low siding coming into the turn.
Okay. Very cool. Well, Rob, your couple that you've got lined up on the notes are two of my favorites.
Oh, since we were talking about braking, had a layer down. I know we've all heard this one. You get the old guy checking out your bike. Yeah, I used to ride, but then I had a layer down so I could avoid a crash. So I'm going to hold my opinion on this one. I want to hear what you guys have to say on it first.
So that is that whole saying has become quite a joke among a circle of people, just a very small or a larger circle of people than it used to be. On Facebook, there's a page called "The Fail of the Dragon."
Oh
yeah.
Man.
And,
Yeah.
and that has there. You will now see people driving around with license plate frames that say "How to Layer Down."
Oh man.
Or it also goes into the same group as Clibbins. Watch out for the Clibbins.
Watch out for the Clibbins. Yeah.
But there's no time with your bike that you're better letting it fall to the ground with no control over where it's going whatsoever, and you sliding along the ground with no control whatsoever as to where you're going. That's better than actually braking and knowing how to brake and knowing how to avoid and being aware, there's if when we get to the point where there's a crash like this, there are so many areas that this could have been prevented beforehand.
Yep.
Better awareness, better skills, working on your skills. That there's no time that sliding the bike down is a great idea.
So this one comes up a lot in class, and we always address it as to, when you hear the myth of, well, I had to lay it down, or I knew someone who they had to lay it down to avoid a crash. So we were like, well, if you had to lay it down to avoid a crash, you crashed.
Yep.
You purposely crashed the bike. So there wasn't avoiding, you did it. And I've had two actual people that have told me this. One was an acquaintance who, and I didn't know how to take it. This was years ago. Told me that he stopped riding because once he had to lay it down to avoid a crash. The other one was surprising. Most recently, I just taught a advanced rider course, and there was someone in the course who was telling me they had a sport bike, and they were telling me they had it set up with whatever the guards on it, and she was saying that she did crash once, or she had to lay it down once to avoid a crash. And I was kind of taken back, and I was like, hold that thought, we're going to discuss that a little bit later. And this was our pre-class conversation. I says, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And unfortunately we didn't, because they had an accident during the course, and had to take off before we could discuss that little, I had to lay it down because I couldn't brake and or swerve around whatever object was in front of me.
So my argument has always been with these guys, okay, there may be one extremely rare situation where that might save your life, and that is you're about to get decapitated by something above bike level. It is almost never going to happen. If that weird movie scenario happens, I'll take that as an answer. But any other time?
Well, Jay Leno had that happen a few years ago, going across a parking lot. He got he ran into a wire that was across a parking lot. So in that case, he should have laid it down underneath the wire.
So I always tell them, it's like, let's look at this logically. What is going to give you the most control over avoiding a situation? The rubber that's connected to the wheel, that's connected to the brakes and has traction with the road, or your shiny paint? What's going to bite the ground harder? It's like, and it's like, let's be honest, most people are not skilled enough riders to crash intentionally. If you laid it down, you crashed, you didn't avoid a crash. End of story.
I think we can all agree on that one.
Yep. So this actually will tie into the next one even too, because that one made me laugh even harder.
The next one, actually, I think probably still today has a huge following, especially Rob, up where you live.
Jumping off the bike can save your life.
Oh, that wasn't the one I was thinking. Sorry, I guess.
No, the next one we're gonna dig into really well too. But jumping off the bike can save your life. Once again, you have now.
I have actually seen this.
Really?
I have seen a good example of this recently. Yes, it was actually on the track down at Barber. Somebody that had just done brake work. There's a longer stretch that goes into a pretty tight turn, and they were doing well over 150 miles an hour, and they squeezed the front brake, and it went for a second, and then there was a total loss of brake fluid through the brake line.
Oh.
Ouch.
Because apparently, unbeknownst to him, it was rubbing on the fairing, completely rubbed through the blind. So he's like, I locked up the rear, got it slowed down a little bit. I bailed. He's like, bike went probably 110, 115 miles an hour straight into the wall.
Ouch.
Oh. So once again,
I woke up in the ambulance.
Weird, rare
Yeah.
scenario where that actually, but in general,
Yeah,
your bike has brakes and tires. You do not.
Yeah.
I did used to joke though. I had for a while I had a 110 scooter that I rode, and it was a tiny little bike, all of 9 horsepower. So I joked that if I ever got into trouble or something would happen, I would just stand up, and just the bike couldn't go fast enough.
So I will admit there actually was one scenario in my riding career where jumping off did actually save my bacon. We were riding off-road up in the bluffs, which are like smaller version of mountains. There's a lot of real good drop-offs. We're doing a single track. I lost control of the back end doing a hairpin up a single track with a 200-foot drop-off next to me. And the bike went one way, I jumped the other, and it tumbled all the way down the hill. And I stayed on the trail. So I wouldn't say it was so much a jump off as it was a stepped off and rolled. But yeah, if I'd have followed the bike, that would have been a bad day. But
typically in street riding,
yeah,
there is no. I think once you get into the dirt, there are a lot more scenarios where hopping off on like a hill or to try and keep it from landing on your leg, those kinds of things do come up a little bit more.
Right. And off-road riding, you're also at a lot slower speed than street riding for the most part, unless you're like Paul Torres or something. But for the most part, yeah, your brakes, your tires, keep them on the ground.
I think it was the last race, it was either Moto 2 or Moto 3 and Moto GP. They had a rider get high-sided off the bike, and the bike continued on in the race without the rider.
Oh man! Now if the bike throws you off, well, the physics are just physics at that point.
But it is amazing. We talk about them being gyroscopes. That thing kept going on its own.
That is awesome.
Without any help.
So going down this same road, my next one, there actually is a scientific answer to this one, but it's not what most people would expect, and that is helmets break necks. Like Tom said, we hear that a ton up here because it's very abate heavy, very anti-helmet, very certain brand of cruiser heavy. And they are anti-helmet, all the freedoms, yay, America, all that. Okay. So, we did a lot of research on this, trying to figure out, because if you wear a good quality helmet, a full face or modular, or even a 3/4, your helmet dips down into your neckline, and it curves. So when you go down, as you slide, as you tumble, it's sliding and it's gliding across whatever surface it is you happen to unfortunately meet. This came from half helmets, because you put that chrome or that brain bucket across top of your head, you now have a 1-inch lip right across the center of your head. That 1-inch lip is going to catch every crack, every curve, any little thing that it can take, and that's where your neck breaks are coming from. So it's the half helmets. A good helmet will, in fact, not break your neck. Unless you have some serious inertia happening, at which point your broken neck was probably the least of your concern at that. You've done other damage.
Let's tie this one in with the other one that I was going to talk about, as far as where, just wearing a helmet in general blocks your vision or is dangerous to wear because, I can't see or hear things around me. Or like you say, it's going to, having that 3-pound or 4-pound helmet on my head is I'm gonna have a neck injury having that. So all of those kind of get bundled into that of why I don't wear a helmet.
Yeah, that is I don't know. Okay, we all obviously wear full face helmets or modular full face helmets. Have any of you guys ever had an issue with your peripheral vision or vision in general being obstructed by your helmet?
No, and as I say, you could barely even see your padding on the sides,
Yeah.
let
Well,
alone.
just about every full face helmet that I'm aware of has at least a 190-degree viewport. Well, if you can see more than 180 degrees out, from here to here, put your fingers outside and try and identify them.
Yeah.
We do that little exercise. Well, it's in the BRC course where you try and identify something until you bring your fingers together. And, you can't really identify anything unless it's within that 3-degree cone in which your brain can recognize and understand what that is. So if that's ridiculous as far as that. I can't see or hear anything. One, hearing anything, I wear earplugs all the time, also underneath my full face helmet,
Yeah,
and I could hear everything fine. I've never had an issue hearing anything around me.
I feel that I can hear things better
Yeah.
with the earplugs and a full face helmet on because I'm hearing the things I want to hear now, not wind.
Exactly. So you're
Because
attenuating the
when,
noise.
when your ears are open, that's all you hear is the rush of the wind. Versus when we take the higher frequency noise, basically noise, out of that equation, you're hearing the things that you actually need to hear, like the loud pipes that save lives.
Yeah.
Right.
Which we're
Yeah.
going to talk about in a minute here too.
And Rob, the other one piece is that you said about, well, catching things and breaking necks. Well, the latest ECE rating 2206 that helmets now sold in Europe have to meet actually addresses rotational stress
Right.
on your helmet. So again, all my helmets are at least ECE rated as well, but they go well beyond DOT. But they've addressed that, and I don't even know if there is a half helmet that is ECE
No.
rated. I've never looked to see.
There's only actually a handful of modulars that are ECE. There's not many.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, they had to, and actually that's where you're seeing a lot of the helmet manufacturers coming out with the MIPS technology, the inertial, I forget what it stands for.
To address the rotational stress.
Right. But as far as the vision part
MIPS
of it,
6D.
to the
Yeah,
vision
with
part
6D is another one, I think.
we have family who are anti-helmet, and they were arguing that point with me. I said, okay. She same head size as my wife, so I said, here, put this on. I said, tell me when you can see my finger, and I was testing her peripheral vision. She told me when she could stop. I said, all right, take it off. Do it again. She said, okay, stop. I said, okay. Same spot. Well, that's not possible. I couldn't see it. Obviously, you could because you told me when to stop. Oh, and she started arguing the up and down because, the helmet comes out away from your forehead. Well, you're not looking at airplanes on a motorcycle. And if you need to look up, your neck does this, right? It's like I can see just as clearly out of my helmet as I can without it. And I don't know where that comes from. So that may have been the case for helmets in the 70s because early technology, but I don't know.
Now is Rob, Wisconsin, is that a you don't have a helmet law in Wisconsin, correct?
We do not.
Okay. Georgia we do. Yeah.
Now Michigan does, and a lot of the riders here will go up to the UP, so most of them usually have the bare bones whatever basic they can get away with. But
I thought Michigan got rid of theirs several years ago.
Did they? I thought they still had them because a bunch of the guys are still talking about it.
I thought they did it if you were over 21 and had so much insurance, then you could ride without a helmet. Because the report was that right after they did it, their motorcycle deaths increased by several double-digit percentages.
Who would have guessed?
Pennsylvania's helmet law is pretty similar to that. What you were describing for Michigan. There's a certain age. I can't remember what it. I think it's either. I think it's 21. It's so much time riding, or having taking the basic rider course. So you can go take a safety course to get out of wearing a helmet.
That's interesting.
Wasn't there another Arkansas or somebody just had a similar thing where they repealed their helmet law to a certain extent, and the same result: deaths went up.
Yeah, how about that?
I think our state's looking at it was that you're making that decision based on being told what could happen because of it. It's an informed consent versus an uneducated one.
So basically, they're basing it on you've went to the course, you know what this means. So,
yep.
Yeah,
you're now making an informed decision.
Yes,
you're making an informed
I mean,
decision.
And I've worked in emergency services for almost 20 years now at this point, and I cannot remember having a motorcycle fatality that I was at wearing a full face helmet that wouldn't have involved a great speed. That probably wouldn't have been survivable if they were wearing a bubble. But I've been to plenty relatively low speed accidents where people had massive head injuries or have died because they were either wearing the beanie that says DOT on the back or nothing at all.
Yeah, and that's the other argument against is that, well, if I have a horrific accident, I just want to die. I don't want to be a vegetable.
You won't.
Oh, that's
wearing the helmet is supposed to prevent the vegetable.
Yeah.
So the one that really gets me up here is it's not even the breaks the neck thing or it's you'll never fully experience the freedom of a motorcycle if you're bundling yourself up in a helmet. I don't know.
But then we get a fairing the size of a snowplow, throw it on the front of the bike, and make sure it plays your music as loud as possible.
Yes.
And attach it to the forks because that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't really get much over 60 mile an hour anyway, so it's not like they're going to have to worry about the speed waffles. I'm going to get fired from Harley. Okay, truth be told, they actually do make pretty decent bikes if you like the Cruiser, but I don't like the lifestyle around it. Just thank God it's going away. Keep the bikes, get rid of the lifestyle, wear the gear.
Well, unfortunately, the other topic fits right into the lifestyle.
Oh, which one would that be?
About loud pipes. This one lives on everywhere. I have people still argue with me about it, that loud pipes save lives, and say, I have been next to a car and they started coming into my lane and I blipped the throttle and they suddenly knew I was there.
No, they saw you. All right, so I'm going to challenge everybody who thinks this is actually the case to go out and do this test. Go out in your car and roll up all the windows and turn on the air conditioning full blast and crank up your tunes like 99% of drivers out there. And go find an area where you can get a few of these bikes to go by you and tell me when you hear them. You know when you're going to hear them? When they're past you. Because noise is directional. Sound waves travel in the direction they're being aimed. Think about a speaker. If you stand behind a speaker versus in front of it, big difference in sound. You're really not going to know that thing is there. It's the same with the horns. You can play your horn all day. These cars nowadays are so tightly sealed, and the stereos are so loud in them. I mean, I've had guys...
From driving a fire truck that has to have a placard on the dash that says, this makes over this many decibels. Hearing protection must be worn in the truck, with sound that is perfectly aimed to point forward towards cars, and people still can't hear that.
True.
They're not going to hear the pipes.
Absolutely.
However,
not.
I do have a fifth theory on why this continues, and I think part of it is there is a huge industry based on this idea of selling very loud pipes to people who want to buy them for a lot of money.
Yeah, so I mean, the core premise is that if my bike makes a lot of noise, then cars around me or drives around me know that I'm there and will annoy me. So there are two things. One is, well, all right, so that's the basic premise. So if we go with that premise, I'm going to give props. I got this from at Revzilla. There's a Sturgeon Dunbar.
Oh, I love Sturgeon Dunbar.
He said, okay, if that's your basic premise, and that's what everybody argues with, then why don't you just short out your horn so that your horn is beeping constantly? That makes noise. People will know that you're definitely there, and it's louder than your pipes, but it's not cool.
Exactly. Oh, plot twist to that too.
Well, I mean, I think
nobody's going to hear your horn either. And that is actually aimed for that reason and toned for that reason.
So my phrase is, no, loud pipes don't save lives, but they will annoy the crap out of everybody around you.
Yep.
But what will save lives is flashing headlights, wearing high vis. Heck, even the people that put the neon or LED lights all around their bike, they're probably still doing more than those loud pipes are ever going to do.
That's not
okay,
cool.
So Wisconsin actually used to have a law against underglow neons. Like, they were hard-nosed about it, too. And several years ago, they revoked that law on motorcycles. They just can't have flashing red or blue lights. So, I actually liked that idea. And their whole reasoning made sense. It's like, look, motorcycles are hard to see as it is. And they're harder to see at night. So if we let them light themselves up a little more, I'm actually on board with that. If you want to light your bike up at night and put the underglow on it, that makes sense. Because now you are an uncommon thing in a common situation.
And here the Stretch Busa crew was right all along.
Yeah. I mean, not going to lie. I've actually had a couple of bikes. I threw that on, and it did it. It may just be in my head, but I actually feel like when I'm riding at night, I was more visible. I had less interaction where I had to avoid something. Yeah. Which, to be honest, the loud pipes... Just learn to ride more defensively. That's your savior, not some exhaust that it makes all kinds of weird noises and annoys everybody for miles, or the stereo that you have on your fairing cranked to 11 with really poor taste in music. Hey, not judging. I have poor tastes too. But it's not a pipe thing. The pipes are pointing out the back. I can tell you, driving a semi all day long, I can have guys in straight pipe Harleys. You know when I hear them? When they're in front of me. And that's about it. As they're going by my window is about when I hear them. It's just the nature of the beast. Yep. So, since we're dispelling crashing and all kinds of fun stuff, and we're talking about cars and traffic, cars cause most motorcycle crashes. And I know RJ and I got really deep into some data that I'm going to bring up here shortly as a screen share And Tom, I want to get your opinion on this too. So I'm going to screen share this thing real quick. And I want you both. Where did it go? Not Chrome tab, window. There we go. Thank you. All right, you read this. What do you think? So for anybody,
single unit crashes. Got it.
for anybody on the audio feed when this goes live on the pod feeders, the slide we're looking at is from the Mozak and Wisconsin Motorcycle Safety spring kickoff meeting for our rider safety. Most motorcycle crashes are single unit crashes. And when you look at it, they've got a couple years of a breakdown, and it has not changed. The average is 54%. The other side piece of data to that is the 2-unit crashes, which represent another 42%, were very significantly leaning towards motorcycle to motorcycle crashes, meaning it was still a bike that caused the crash. So, does that tell you guys that cars are the problem?
No, it's us. We're our own worst enemy.
Now, RJ sent me this from Pennsylvania's Department of Transportation. And funny, their numbers are almost exactly the same. And that's several states away, so it's not Wisconsin specific. When you look at, I think I lost how we got there before, but they essentially came up with the same thing. It was about 54% were single vehicle.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's. I had seen some similar information on this as far as that it's not only single vehicle, but I think the other was that 70% of motorcycle accidents had alcohol involved.
That was another one of the slides they brought up on ours. So, killed motorcycle drivers by suspected. Here, I'll share this one again. All right, once again for the audio feed listeners. Killed motorcycle drivers by suspected and not suspected drug or alcohol use. There's a lot. I mean, you're talking out of 120 roughly in 2021, a third of it at least.
Yeah.
You know, it's a quarter to a third. And
it's already an extremely dangerous sport that we're involved in, or method of transportation. When you're dulling the senses needed to do this complex activity, there's going to be negative results. You're not going to be as sharp.
Yeah.
And you know, we always talk as far as in the MSF courses, you know, the two most likely places for crashes are intersections and curves.
Right.
So intersections, yes, are a factor of other vehicles potentially there, and then someone coming into your area, but the curves are almost, I think, all. Or it's very rare someone coming into your lane, but it's usually rider error for the curves.
Yep. And something else, this is another slide that Wisconsin Department of Transportation gave to us. And it's a color-coded slide that says time of day and day of week. And the redder the color, the more incidences were happening at that date and time. And if you look at it, for the audio listeners, that 4 to 5 p.m. window on a Saturday afternoon is a really hot button time for motorcycle collisions. And what is that time usually in most areas? Happy hour.
Rob, can you go back to that slide?
Well, it's not only happy hour, but it's also that could be the end of your, Saturday's a heavy ride day.
Right.
End of your day. If you've been riding all day, you're tired. You've got to tone it down, take a little more precaution. If you don't, yeah, I could see that where fatigue can come into play.
So they did a little bit of a study
There's
comparing this to intoxication. And they found that these times a day, there was a very high concentration of collisions involving intoxication.
The one block that really stood out for me there's one time in the middle of the night that it's yellow versus, which is a more moderate color than it really should be on any other day of the week, and that's at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
So that actually, Wisconsin's very heavy on night shift work and transportation, things like that. Believe it or not, we thought maybe that was related to intoxication too, because Friday night after work, everybody goes to the bar time's 2 a.m. That was
what I was thinking.
The collisions involved in that were actually only about 5% intoxication related. But what they found was the tired third shift workers coming home in the middle of the night. Believe it or not, there was a high contingency of single vehicles overrode their headlights, ran off the road. So, and that's a lot of this data. If you start following it, Saturday and Sunday, heavy ride days, that late afternoon window. Now, if you get into that 6, 7, 8 o'clock time period across all days, but that's when it's starting to be dusk. It's starting to be, animals are coming out. It's getting harder to see. And that weird daylight shift thing. So it kind of messes with your eyes. That actually made sense because there's a lot of single vehicle accidents in that time every day. Surprisingly enough, though, not as many deer hits as you would think. Now, that doesn't account for other animals because we've got a ton of them that run across the road. Or cows. Because apparently that's an issue.
We had a rider killed here, I think, last year by a turkey.
That doesn't surprise me. Those things are bowling balls.
Well, and it attempted to fly. And for people that don't have turkeys do not fly well.
No.
Or for long.
Nope.
And it took the rider off, right, like hit him right in like the chest head area and took him off the bike.
Yeah, I mean, the good sized wild turkey will weigh, 25?
Yeah.
Maybe 30 pounds.
30 pounds, yeah.
We had one several years ago with my wife and I were on a back road and turkey flew right over us. Thankfully cleared us by about 10, 15 feet. But yeah, it was a little scary.
Well, you imagine taking that 25, 30-pound bowling ball to the chest at highway speed. Not many people are staying on their motorcycle.
No, I had a friend who did hit one. He was on a K1600, and it hit his quarter panel bearing, ripped the side mirror off the bike, caused a bunch of plastic damage, but he was able to stay upright. But yeah, it did some damage to the bike.
Yeah.
And he was not running fast, maybe 40, 45 miles an hour.
Yeah. Bowling balls, man. Those things. Ooh. I had one hit the windshield of a semi once, and that was enough for me to go, oh, that would hurt.
Yeah.
So, obviously, cars are not causing our crashes. Riders are causing our crashes. And we can minimize the car problem by paying more attention. Which brings up another one. Tom, this is coming off of your area. I'm too good to crash.
Yeah, so that one. So where do you hear that one?
I hear that a lot with the anti-helmet crowd, actually.
Really?
Learn to ride better. You don't need all the stupid gear. You don't need the helmet. Really, because we can totally control everything.
Wow. See, that's one that, at least personally, no one has ever told me.
That might also be the environment that I'm in up here, but that is a very heavily propagated statement in that crowd.
That one's interesting. I had not heard that. Or Jay, do you get that one at
Yeah.
all?
No, I have not heard that one before either. However, I have heard the other one that I think we're probably going to go into next.
Which one is that?
There's only two types of riders.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that one has been told to me several times, and surprisingly, it's only been told to me by those people who have actually crashed once and or multiple times. So for those that haven't heard this one, it's, well, there's only two types of riders: those that have crashed and those that will crash. Which my response is typically both. So I don't buy into that. I don't track my mileage on a bike, but I have yet to have a get off. Knock on wood, thankfully. I try and be fairly safe, at least on the road. Now, off road, I will admit, you throw that out the door. Off road, that's nature of the beast. You're coming off your bike.
Yep.
You know.
No.
But on the road, and people have, like I say, I've only heard this from people who have crashed their bike, saying that, well, everybody crashes.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I've talked about in the class too, because you hear that in the class. Well, no, I actually do know riders who have been riding very successfully on the street for decades who've never crashed. I'm not going to say they haven't forgot to put their kicks down and drop down their bike on the ground, but crashed? No.
Yeah.
Now, I wonder how much of this actually comes from racing, be it off-road or be it the road course, because that is one scenario, like you said, Tom, riding off-road, you're going to crash. The track, if you're racing competitively...
I have never heard that from anybody that wasn't riding a certain type of bike that is manufactured in your state, Rob.
Really?
Who have no interest in racing.
Yeah, so I've not heard it from the racing crowd. But I've heard it from the sport bike crowd as well.
I know the race, like I never really heard it directly from the racing crowd. Like, yeah, you're racing, you're gonna crash. As much as I have heard it from that same crowd, I will say that. But anybody who follows racing or has done like class racing to a certain level,
yeah,
they know, okay, you're pushing this thing to its absolute limits. Sometimes you get a little overzealous and go beyond that limit and you crash. But that's an environment.
And racing is a little bit different because you can't know where that limit is and know that feeling of that limit until you've pushed that limit. I think it was Mark Marquez that he used to crash almost every weekend in practice.
Yeah.
Because he'd push it until he found that limit and then went over it and go, okay, well, I got to go to 99% of that.
Yep.
And that, I mean, he's made a pretty good career out of it.
I'd say. I will say, though, up here with the guys who typically... The ones I usually hear it from up here are also the same guys that give me the had a layer down thing. Same conversation. It's usually the two of them.
And I usually get it from the more senior bikers.
You know, that may have been the case when bikes were less technologically advanced, before they had brakes.
Well, and the tire compounds were somewhere on the scale of wood.
Yeah.
I mean, before we had grippy tires, before we had good disc brakes, before we had ABS, before.
Yeah, and we can probably track back. All of us are rider coaches of one way or shape or form. And we've all probably had those conversations where we've analyzed a crash. and we've said, okay, let's talk about your crash and find out what you could have done different, because it's an interaction of factors, right?
Yep.
And we've all probably had those moments where we've been able to say, well, no, this is where you failed as a rider, and this is where you could improve to not have it happen again. So, how many of those people were just riding over the limit of the technology they had at the time? No different than today. It's like, no, it's you can ride for a lifetime and never crash. It is possible.
Absolutely, and I hope to do that.
Well, you've been riding for how long? Have you actually ever had a crash on the street?
No.
Exactly.
Nope. I've dropped my bike once in a parking lot. That was about it. Thankfully. Quickly picked it up in about 10 seconds before anybody saw me.
Yeah. So I used to have a running joke with my wife, because early on when I was really getting into the iron butt stuff, you know, you get that fatigue set in on one of those really crazy rides, and you pull up to a gas pump, you don't put your kickstand down all the way, and your bike is now on its side. And it was such a common thing early on. I actually joked when I got a new bike, I'm just going to take a picture of it, kick it over in the driveway, and get it out of the way.
Yeah.
I'm going to pre-scratch it, and it'll never crash or never happen again. I will say...
go
ahead.
I was going to say close calls. Yeah, dozens. And, pucker factor, dozens.
But that's where we train.
My only real crash that I had was on the track that I've had.
Now, I will say, in all my years of riding, yes, I have crashed on the street several times. 2 of them were actually deer hits. Not much you could do about those. One of them sideswiped me in the back end. The other one jumped off an embankment on top of me. Okay, I'll take that. That's not an indication of every rider is going to crash. They were just bad situations for me. I was rear-ended twice. Same situation. I wouldn't have mattered what I was in, bike or car, I would have been rear-ended at that specific time. Not an indication that all riders are going to crash. The rest of them, I can pretty much point to a certain individual who was doing something he shouldn't have been at the time, and they were his fault. So, pushing something.
So, are you referring that it was the nut that was between the seat and the handlebars?
Absolutely. And I will own every single one that I did, because I know what I did wrong. I know what I shouldn't have been doing. And that is not an indication that every rider is going to crash. It's an indication that I was an idiot at the time. So I will tell students those stories if they ever want to hear them, because, hey, look, I did this dumb thing. This is the result. Don't do the dumb thing.
It's the biggest thing. Doesn't matter how much experience we have or how many years we've been riding. What's the hardest thing to overcome? Self-restraint.
Yep. And I am a semi-recovering hooligan. There's a self-restraint problem there. It's gotten better because I don't bounce anymore. But in my younger days, not so much. So, since we're talking about all this crashy stuff, Tom, this is one of your subjects, actually. Fortnite released a video a while back about armor and not needing armor. So
yes. So this was, I guess, last month, and this got a lot of press throughout the motorcycle industry. And if y'all don't know, Fortnite has several million followers on YouTube. It's fantastic videos that he produces. One, I will give him props for this particular video, and he just released another one a couple days ago, and he did the same thing. It was a 6.5-minute video, all done in a single take, while he was walking on a trail, and ended up at a specific tree with some of his gear at a time where he was right in line. So it was beautifully done. But the premise of his video was, he had a bunch of He cited a bunch of crash data and a particular researcher who had done some research on it and provided crash data, and that the overall premise was that the armor within your jacket and your shoulder armor, your knee armor, your elbow armor will not keep you from breaking your arm or breaking your knee. So, if it impedes you from enjoying or being comfortable, you're better off taking it out because it's not going to stop you from breaking your arm. So that was his premise on it. There was a lot of conjecture about it. Even Bennett's Bike Social had the professor that I think it was a professor that Fortnite had cited, and even he said that wasn't the conclusion, that Ryan Fortnite kind of picked and chose his data that he was doing to make his point. Conclusion on this is that should you be removing your armor, will it make you more comfortable? It might make your jacket more comfortable. Will that should you be removing it because anytime you crash, it doesn't matter. It's not really impeding that you're going to break your arm or break your leg with it. No, and even the person that did the research said no. Having the armor in there does something. It also adds abrasion resistance. Right. And yes, if you are going to hit an object hard enough, it doesn't matter whether you have armor or not. Yeah, you may still break your armor. You may still dislocate your shoulder. The armor is not going to save that, but in a minor get off, a low slide perhaps, it will help that deep bruising or that bone bruise. So it goes, this kind of goes along the line of what we were talking about earlier, wearing the helmet. Well, it's not going to save me in that 100-mile-an-hour crash. Well, no gear will. If you go hit a brick wall at 80 miles an hour, I'm sorry, you're going to die. I don't care what you're wearing.
Physics is physics.
So that it was an interesting video that really, I don't know if he did it tongue in cheek or it was absolutely serious about it. He got a lot of flack for it. But I think it at least brought up the conversation. And I think maybe that's the point of it, is it brought up the conversation of we should be wearing gear. It helps in abrasion resistance. Having armor, even level 1, even ghost armor in your elbows, shoulders, will help in minor where perhaps you could not break your arm by just doing that simple fall over. Let's say you forgot that kickstand and you fell down right on your elbow. If you had no armor in, there is a chance that's going to take the full impact and you could have broken your elbow. With armor in, it may have saved it. Don't know, but at least you give yourself the chance. So that was my thought on it.
My looking at the data, looking at the video from Bennett's, the one thing that came to my mind was the accident where you don't go receive treatment. The bike isn't damaged to the point that it needs to be towed.
Yes.
Did it really happen?
Yeah.
All of those accidents aren't being captured in any data because no one's reporting them. Because why would they? I dropped the bike, or I fell over it 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour. No, I'm not hurt. I'm not going to receive treatment. I'm picking the bike back up and riding it home.
Yeah, I mean, even 30, 40 miles an hour, if it's something that you can pick the bike up, ride it home, you're not injured, the bike just needs some basic cosmetic repair you can do on your own.
Yep. And all of those non-injuries happen, I think, because of gear and armor in the gear.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, my track crash that I had, I was probably doing 35 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, came off. I mean, I bent shift linkage on the bike, but I rode the bike back. I felt fine. I mean, there's a little scuff on my leathers, but that's it. Like that wouldn't have been a reportable accident for me.
Yeah, I mean, my deer hit a couple years ago is a good example of that. I mean, it ended up being reportable because the insurance fixed the bike.
Yeah.
But had I just paid to fix the bike myself, I was fine. I was sore, but I mean, I can tell you, my road is a cheese grater, and all my gear rashed, had to be replaced. The armor, where it actually rubbed through the Gore-Tex layer, it was on the armor. Had I not had that armor, I'd have no skin.
But and my to not shame my wife, but she had a little incident in our garage last season where she had her foot kind of caught coming off, like getting off the bike when she parked it, and the bike ended up falling over on her, and she either bruised or broken a rib, and it was weeks that was hurting for her. And we were just talking to somebody yesterday at our ride and I started wearing one as well, wearing a tethered vest, that they did the same thing. Their vest actually deployed. And he's like, I felt fine after it. Like, I didn't have anything that hurt. I'm pretty sure that I know she would exchange that $25 cartridge to replace in the vest over having to deal with the sore ribs for a couple weeks. And not running and not doing not riding, not doing those other activities. So, I mean, wearing the gear helps. I mean,
well, and let's look at this logically. When you have a collision, what are the first things that are going to hit? It's going to be your palms. It's going to be your elbows. It's going to be your knees. What's one thing that the road surface has in common everywhere? They're imperfect.
Yeah.
There's rocks. There's shrapnel, there's pointy things, all things that armor is designed to absorb and distribute impact from. So instead of putting a half-inch deep rock through your knee, your armor is taking the hit.
Well, I mean, I think, and it goes back to even the helmet thing that we were talking about earlier. I mean, that the graphic that's shown in, I think, almost every class of where most of the impacts occur on a helmet. And when you fall, if the first thing that tends to hit on your head is your face.
Yeah.
Yep.
Your chin, face. And as someone who's had to manage an airway on somebody whose chin face became the human crayon, I don't understand how anyone doesn't wear these.
Yeah. I had someone once ask me about, because my bikes are my only form of transportation, so I ride everywhere. And they were like, well, do you gear up, even when you're going to the store a couple miles down the road? I was like, yeah, I put everything on. I wear an airbag too, and I put an airbag on, my airbag vest. I said, because guess what? The pavement just 2 miles from my house is just as hard as the pavement 100 miles from my house.
Yep.
So what does it matter?
3/4 of a mile from my house. That's where I was when the deer hit my bike.
Yeah.
Just down the street.
I mean, they say most accidents happen within a mile of home.
Yeah.
Well, because that's where all of your riding is.
Yeah.
Every time you leave the house is always a mile from your home, or you're coming back, So of course that's where they're always going to occur, because that's where the highest percentage of all your riding is.
Yeah.
Well, and you also have the effect, the other side of that. Usually when you're getting home, if you are going somewhere, you're tired, or when you're leaving, you're stiff, tires are cold, you're not fully in it,
or that is the most familiar area to you, so you're not paying attention because you do it all the time.
We talk about this in the class, I know for sure, at MSF, Tom. Inattentional blindness.
Yeah.
And that is most common in areas you are most familiar with. And what are you most familiar with? Home. The area right around your home.
Yep.
Especially if it's something you're doing routine, like going to work, coming home from work. It's that autopilot mode, man. It'll get you every time.
Yep.
Well, I think we have beat the brakes off of every one of these. And it's been really fun and really interesting. Everybody in the audience, let us know what you guys think. Hit us up, message us, post on the thing on Facebook, have fun with it. We want to hear you guys' opinions on these. Which brings us tonight to, we're going to do something a little bit different with our final thoughts. Tom actually had the joy of going and doing some demo rides and experiencing some new bikes. So we want to hear what he had to say about these. So why don't you kick that off for us, Tom?
Yeah, so for the last month, I got out to a couple of demo days. I'm going to take these in reverse order. So about a week ago, I did a Yamaha demo day. And last month, or about 3 weeks ago, actually, I did a BMW demo day. So let me start with the Yamaha first. I only got to ride two bikes just because of scheduling. So first one I rode that you're familiar with, of course, is the Tracer 9 GT Plus. And I wanted to ride this because I wanted to do a comparison to my Triumph Tiger 900 because this is a bike that is sometimes cross-shocked against it. So first thing, when I got on the bike itself, noticed for me, the bike was cramped. I thought I had to tuck my feet up very tight and far behind me. And legs were in a very acute, knees were in a very acute bent position rather than relaxed. So that's, ergos. Now, like I say, for me, I'm 6'3". I got 37-inch arms, 34-inch inseam. So I've got long legs, long arms. It's all bikes are always a challenge. But that getting on the 9, the Tracer was just tight. After that, as far as the running of the bike, engine really nice. It responds fantastic. Quick shifter, buttery smooth. The bike responded, held a curve, really nice. The only riding wise, on-off throttle was a little snatchy, but much better than I've seen it in other Yamahas that I've ridden in the past. So that was the Tracer.
That one, so I've talked to a couple other people that have had the Gen 1s like mine. So if anybody is not familiar, I have a Gen 1 Tracer 900 from when they used to call them the FJ09. Their throttle was so atrocious on those that you had to get them flash tuned. And I've heard some people say they're a lot better on the newer ones, but one thing Yamaha has always struggled with is that snatchy on-off throttle response. Their injector decel cut is really aggressive compared to a lot of others, and it's not specific to the Tracer, it's all of their bikes.
And it was the exact same thing on the next bike that I got on. The throttle response was exactly the same, and a completely different bike. So the next one I did was a let me make sure I have this, XSR 700. So basically a little roadster. This was it was a great little bike. I had a blast riding it. The riding position to me on that bike was much more relaxed than on the Tracer. For a 700, it had great acceleration. It was fun to throw around in the few curves that we took. Braking was good. It was just, for the dollars, I had to look it up afterwards. I think MSRP on it is $89.9, something in that range. But I don't know how it compares to its brethren as far as other price points, but it was a fun little bike. But the same thing, on-off throttle was still a little bit snatchy on that.
So if anybody's not familiar with the XSR 700, you might be familiar with Yamaha's MT-07. So the XSR 700 is the MT-07 with a more retro styling to it, but it's still that same 700 parallel twin, and the torque band on that thing is awesome.
Yeah, they are absolute hooligan bikes.
Oh yeah.
This was a fun little bike, and I could definitely see, as far as like just to have a fun bike to ride around town, this would be great.
And I'm wondering how much of that cutoff and the snatchiness on the throttle like that is due to emissions.
It's all emissions. So a
Probably,
lot of
yeah.
it's caused by what they call it or decel injector cut. So when you roll off the throttle all the way, it shuts the injectors entirely off.
Yeah.
And then when you roll back on, they kick back in. Well, somehow Yamaha has not figured out how to make them smoothly transition back in.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, we got power again.
And I've only found that on Yamahas. I've never not found that on most other bikes that have demoed, and even the three, the ones that I'll talk about, the BMWs that I tried, did not have that. None of the two Triumphs I own or any of the other Triumphs I've tried have that throttle response.
I honestly think Triumph was one of the first ones to figure out the throttle by wire
Yes.
and make it smooth.
That's what I was just going to say. I mean, BMWs, the ones I've had, early on, they were they were never as bad as Yamaha, but they were snatchy. Suzuki can get real snatchy too. All of them need to go test ride Triumphs and figure out what voodoo magic Triumph does to those motorcycles, because that is the smoothest throttle response I have ever had on a newer bike is demo riding Triumphs. And it doesn't matter which one.
I will give that props as far as to the two I own. But I will say the last time I test rode Yamahas was probably 3 or 4 years ago. It was much better than it was. These bikes were much better than it was back then, but it was still there. I'm sure that you would get used to it as you rode it, but as a demo rider just coming on, that on-off was significant.
You don't so much get used to it as you let the warranty lapse and you send your ECM off to Ivan and let him fix it.
Yeah, there you go.
Or if you're me, say throw it on the dyno and do it yourself. But
so then 3 weeks ago, I went to the BMW demo day, and that's why I'm doing this in reverse order, because I'm going to talk about the most controversial one last. So one of the bikes I rode was a 900R. It was okay. Again, for me, ergos were cramped. That is their parallel twin. It was just, in general, not a good riding experience. It was a really buzzy bike. A lot of vibrations throughout the rev range. Didn't respond that well. So all in all, I did not like the bike at all. It wouldn't be something that I would even consider.
See, now that's their direct competitor, like your MT-09, your Ducati Monster Plus, and Z900s. So if they're not able to hit that territory just right, which is already really saturated, that's going to be a problem for them.
And again, I'm going to compare it to just me. Again, it was also it's a dished seat, so you are locked into position. I dislike that type of seating position because I do like to slide around. So for me, didn't like the seating position. It was cramped, and like I say, I just thought it was a very vibey bike. So I got off of that, and I immediately went on to a R9T, and it was just all right. This was just for the hell of it. Let me compare this to my Triumph Bonneville. That was the most surprising of the 3 BMWs that I rode, where it was a fun bike to ride. And I had no expectations going into it because I've been a little bit anti-9T because, the engine in those is the old oil head engine back from the Boxers of 15 years ago. And BMW really hasn't done anything to that engine in 15 years. But in that package, I will say it was, the ergos were good. The throttle was good. Acceleration was pretty good, but it was just a nice bike to throw around.
I rode one about 2 years ago, and I think the best way I could describe it is a pure motorcycle. If you were to write what a motorcycle is, it feels like it's the definition of one. There's not a lot of stuff that it doesn't need. It rides nice. It's just very neutral. It was a wonderful bike to ride.
Yep. Yeah, I thought it was surprising. But now, if I compared it against to my Bonneville? No, I would keep my Bonneville. The 9T is probably a little more of a sportier ride, but no, I still like the Bonneville. But it was just like I say, I had no expectations going on, and I thought I wasn't going to really dislike it, and it surprised me as how fun it was to ride.
So is that their more retro styled looking one?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen that
And
one a couple of times. That's a sharp looking bike.
yeah, and I don't know if the 9T and the 24s now, if they still call it that. This may have been a 23, so I'm not sure. I think they have renamed those the R12s now because it is a 1200 engine.
Okay.
But it's still I had the same engine in my 2010 RT. So it's the oil head engine.
So that's the old 1200.
It is the old 1200. It still has a dry clutch.
Oh, wow. I will say, though, that's a
Yep.
tank of a motor. I mean, it's kind of hard to kill him. So I guess.
It is. But it worked in this application. So save the last one because this will be the most controversial one. I tried the 2024 GS, the number one adventure bike in the world. The redesigned GS that has all of the whiz bang stuff. In a word, didn't like it. Now, I've owned two of these before. I had a 2014 GSA and I've owned a 2018 GS. So this is the all new design. It is a smaller bike. Again, the seat does not adjust. Again, for me, ergos, I thought it was cramped. It's tighter in the legs. The handlebar is much closer to you. It felt like a smaller bike. It didn't feel that like it was that light. And I've seen some things. I know that they claimed weight is about 540. I've started seeing some rumblings of people that have taken their GSs and weighed them, and oh, surprise, surprise, wet weight's coming out around more 580. So I'm not sure where that claimed 540 come from. But again, as a GS, that motor, that 1300 motor, it was powerful. The bike held onto a corner very nicely, great acceleration. BMW on a boxer engine still cannot figure out how to do a quick shifter.
Nope.
It works a little bit better than the previous versions, but I'm sorry, it's still crap compared to Yamaha or Triumph or almost anybody else that makes a quick shifter. Maybe it works better on some of the other models, but on a boxer engine, it doesn't work.
The only BMW quick shifter I found that actually works well is on the S1000s.
Yeah, probably that's the 4-cylinder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other annoying thing was, okay, these were brand new bikes, so they weren't serviced yet. So apparently BMW in their infinite wisdom, if you're below your first service and you go above 5,000 RPM, all kinds of stuff starts lighting up on the dash. Bright white flashes at you.
I can confirm that was also the case on the 2021 1250 GSA. And
it was annoying.
Really annoying.
At first, I thought something was, they didn't tell us anything before we got on the bike. I thought something was wrong. It was like, and I then realized as a couple of miles went by, okay, it's me. I'm revving this thing up a little bit as I'm shifting or going through the curves. That was the case. So I just tried to ignore it. But my other contention was, okay, it's a bad cross shot, but I compared it to my 900. And I'm riding the GS, and the GS, by the time you outfit it, now you will see the GS MSRP for 18.9 or something like that as a stripped down version. Those are unicorns. They don't exist.
Right.
You have to buy a GS with the premium package fully outfitted, and then you're in the mid to upper 20s for it. So I'm riding the bike and comparing it to my Tiger. Now it doesn't have it doesn't have the cruise control whiz bang stuff, the adaptive cruise control. My Tiger doesn't have shaft drive and things like that. But I had trouble finding $10,000 difference between what I owned and the new GS, especially given the ergonomic challenges that I knew if I bought that bike, I'd have to get another seat. I'd have to have a seat raised. I'd have to have the handlebars raised and pushed back a little bit. I'd have to change my seating position to be back another few inches. I just overall didn't care for the bike. We'll see when the GSA comes out next year, how they do that redesign. Hopefully better, but wasn't a fan of the new GS.
Because that's going to be my big contention, being a huge GSA fan. At the price point the regular GS is at right now, that's the old GSA price. So now we're talking the GSA is probably going to be pushing up into the low 30s. That's putting them at the top of the pile. The only thing competing with that price-wise at that point is the Multistrada V4S, Pikes Peak,
right,
and the other one. And those are a lot more power, a lot more tech. Like, they're a lot better sorted. I don't know. GS might be pushing some territory they don't want to be in.
I was say the only other, and the CVO Mud Glides.
CVO Mud Glide's only $28,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 28.4. And that's all kitted out. It's got all the extra crash plates and crash bars, the auxiliary lighting. It's all the stuff that you're going to have to pay to add to the GSA. Because it even, like the Pan America even comes with the luggage and everything in the CVO model. It's done. You just ride it off.
Hey guys, I got to drop. We've somewhere we have to be in a little bit.
All right.
I think we're at this for a while. That was my wrap. We'll end it there.
Sounds like a plan. It's been great, everybody. Jerry, we missed you. We'll see you when you get back. And join us next month for another RideMSTA podcast. Good night, everybody.
Thanks all. Bye.